Implicit bias exists when we unconsciously hold attitudes or judgments about other people or social groups. It is also called unconscious bias. Having implicit bias means we harbor stereotypes about other people without realizing that we're doing so. It's a prejudice deep-seated within the human brain, below the conscious level.
The immediate feeling you get or the immediate thoughts you have about a person.
Because they're unconscious, you generally aren't aware of them unless you're put in a situation where you're confronted with it.
They're difficult to overcome when we don't know we have them.
Implicit bias is often negative. Research has shown negative unconscious bias against racial groups, genders, LGBTQ+, and other marginalized people. Although we may be prejudiced against our own group, more often we unconsciously hold positive stereotypes about people in our in-group and negative stereotypes about people in out-groups.
Maybe the way you treat others as opposed to treating others that look like you or that act like you or that are your friends.
We are raised in very different ways in different homes, and you don't understand how your brain is developing and what you're picking up on, but those things influence you.
Especially if they're opinions of people we trust, like our parents, family members, closest friends, teachers.
A lot of the biases come from the unknown. So when you don't know something, you make an assumption.
Studies show that implicit bias often runs counter to our conscious, expressed beliefs. For example, not many physicians consciously hold racially discriminatory views, but research shows that doctors tend to recommend less pain medication for Black patients than they do for white patients with the identical injury. Likewise, not many people advocate for discrimination in hiring, but studies show that white applicants receive significantly more responses from potential employers than Black applicants do with the same resume. As Daniel Kelly and colleagues note, people can be explicitly unbiased, yet implicitly biased.
You can be thinking positively and acting positively towards people, but underneath there still might be something going on that you don't even know is there.
I realized that I had an unconscious gender bias and that I was helping my female coworkers who were perfectly capable carry heavy equipment when they didn't need my help.
I think maybe when I left the military, I think I had a lot of hesitation towards my civilian counterparts.
Sometimes I find myself with sort of an age bias. I kind of write off what they can contribute because I think they're younger and maybe not as experienced.
In the criminal legal system, implicit bias creates an unacceptable risk of wrongful conviction for people of color. Research has found implicit racial bias affecting prosecutors, judges, potential jurors, defense counsel, witnesses, parole boards, probation officers, pathologists, and police officers. While conscious racial bias does play a role in wrongful convictions, the impact of implicit racial bias in wrongful convictions cannot be overstated.
Yeah, I'm a gay Latino male, and I'm also a veteran. I think being able to travel around those different circles really give me an opportunity to see how people treat each other differently around those different circles.
Of course, no system is perfect. For example, in the U.S., for every 300,000 car trips, 2 people are injured. And for every 300,000 surgeries, 25 people experience major medical mistakes or die. But for every 300,000 convictions in the U.S., an estimated 9,000 people are wrongfully convicted. Indeed, the National Academy of Sciences estimates that 4% of death row inmates are wrongfully convicted, meaning that nearly 100 innocent people are sitting on death row right now. And with nearly 2 million people incarcerated, there are likely 200,000 innocent people in U.S. jails and prisons today.
I am very conscientious of when I'm walking down the street and who's around me and who am I going to walk around to avoid because they make me feel uncomfortable or unsafe. And why am I feeling uncomfortable and unsafe? Is that something because of the color of their skin or what they're wearing?
Even though black people are less than 14% of the American population, they represent more than 50% of the 3,500 plus innocent prisoners exonerated since 1989. According to data, black Americans are 7.5 times more likely than white Americans to be wrongfully convicted of murder. 8 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted of rape. And 19 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted of serious drug crimes. On average, innocent black inmates spend 3 years longer in prison before being exonerated of murder than innocent white inmates do.
Even in the classroom, I experienced a time where I had a classmate who made a full-on assumption that, growing up in a single-parent home meant that my dad wasn't in my life. But I lost my dad to cancer when I was young.
I think most of the implicit biases that I've run into are probably positive ones, things that come with being a white male and having height and having a good voice and things like that, instead of negative ones. So I think I'm generally a beneficiary of implicit biases.
People tend to stereotype Asians as being really good at math and being really smart, and it's a positive stereotype, but it's a stereotype nonetheless. When you're in a working group, sometimes you're automatically assigned the math portions of a project, and so yes, you can hold positive stereotypes, but stereotypes can still have a detrimental or a negative impact.
Because implicit bias, racial or otherwise, operates at a mostly unconscious level, it is difficult to overcome. But fortunately, some research shows that stereotypes can be unlearned, and that safeguards can be put in place to minimize the impact of implicit bias. For example, women used to make up only a very small percentage of musicians in symphony orchestras. Then, orchestras began holding auditions where the applicants played behind a curtain. Their genders were unknown to the judges. When this happened, the percentage of women chosen to play in symphony orchestras doubled. So, acknowledging the role of implicit bias is critical to addressing it. And learning the facts about implicit bias may help all of us guard against its dangerous impact.
I don't think you can totally ever get rid of implicit biases. I think the most important thing is just being aware of them and doing what you can to counteract them when you can.
We could have a mutually, beneficial conversation and really benefit from learning from each other and really understand that we're all not that different.
Listen, really absorb the experiences of those around you, especially those who come from backgrounds that are unlike yours.
Learn something new about a person, and then that will kind of help shift that bias, because now you've actually asked that person, or now you get to know that person.
There's so many opportunities to engage with others, to say, I don't want to do this again. Can you help me not do that? And people are willing to have those conversations.